Today's video is sponsored by FaceCheck. This is a super useful and free tool that helps you with all things League of Legends. Let's say it's your first game of the day and you need a little refresher in queue. It will show you the top picks and bans for your role in ELO on the current patch. Once you're actually in Champion Select, it can show you stuff about your team. If your team has a Smurf, you'll know it. What I love is that it works directly with the League client. So once you're in Champion Select, if you decide that you want to play Misfortune, for example, it will show you the build and runes as well as a tab of recent pro builds. Then with the click of a button, you can push those runes to your client and easily and automatically set them. Extremely simple and helpful. You can check your stats and compare them to other players in your rank to learn how you stack up against them and how you can improve. And probably my favorite feature is that there's a post-game analysis. This will let you know how you did in your recent match. If you won, you can learn how to repeat it and continue playing well. If the game didn't go as planned, that's alright. Just check what it has to say and learn how you can do better. The best part is that you can do this after every single game, normal games included, so it's really good for practicing. League is a game of resources and information, so there's no reason not to use this super helpful tool starting right now. Take advantage of anything you can get, and download FaceCheck today using my link in the description down below. In the world of competition, whether it be sports or esports, we as fans love to latch on to a common title given to the best of the best, GOAT, aka Greatest of All Time. And in League of Legends, it's more or less agreed that one player, Faker, holds that title. But why? You see, there are videos and articles out there comparing Faker to other GOATs in real sports like Michael Jordan, but often I find these comparisons are far-fetched or difficult to make. Maybe it's because real sports and esports are just a little too different to draw a real comparison. Or is it because they're looking at the wrong player? It's hard to say, and that's a topic that we will explore a little later on. But the real question here is what has made Faker the GOAT of League specifically, an esport where other veteran players like Bangi and Uzi could have been crowned the best ever? What about some of the newer stars like Canyon and Showmaker, a guy that constantly has to fight off Faker comparisons? When discussing why Faker is the GOAT, could we bring up more than just his team success? Could we talk about more than just the World Championships? As I said, comparing Faker to other sports athletes is a little tricky. Sports like football are old as the ground it's played on. Baseball has been around for more than 150 years. American football is so violent and has so many injuries that there can only be one game played a week. How do you even compare that to a video game where you can spend most of the time playing from your own bedroom 10+ hours a day? Would it be all about team success? Maybe, because you would think that in order to be the best, you'd need championships. Makes sense, the best players ever are winners. You can think about someone like Wayne Gretzky, the great one. Not only is he the all-time leader in counting numbers for hockey like points, as well as individual MVP awards, but he's also won some championships. So for Gretzky, it seems obvious, but this is an entire debate in the sports world all on its own. Analysts, writers, and casual fans alike argue day in and day out who is the greatest ever in their favorite sports. Some players like Tom Brady have had immaculate team success and championships, but there's also players like Robert Ory, a good basketball player, no doubt, but not at all in the conversation for best player ever. He benefited from being on a lot of good teams, giving him more NBA championships than Michael Jordan. So what's the most important? Is it individual skill or being a winner in a team game? Obviously, it's a mix of both, but the key is still what is the most important. League of Legends actually has its own version of a player like Dan Marino. For context, Marino was a quarterback in the NFL for the Dolphins that set numerous NFL records and is one of the all-time great players. He's a top 5 quarterback to ever play the game, some even arguing he's the best to ever do it. The thing is, he has 0 Super Bowl rings because winning rings is a team effort, not just one guy's individual skill set. The most similar case in LOL is Uzi, especially in the past, but even now, there are people in this community that swear by Uzi being the GOAT, and at a minimum, the best ADC ever. He's a mechanical god that earns some of the highest praise imaginable from his peers. His style has been, and always will be, hyper-carry focused. You give Uzi the resources, and he goes bananas with unmatched mechanical skill.
And then you play against Uzi, and he just pushes you level 1. Zai versus Kaisen, and it makes no sense. And it's just because his mechanics are so good. He will just perfectly push the wave while out trading you, while like spacing your auto, and like it's just disgusting. Like I just don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Like it just makes no sense. And you go back and watch the replay, and one of the funniest things that Core told me was him and Ruler played against Uzi when they were on Samsung, and they would go back and watch the replay, and Ruler would say, yeah, we just watched the replay and I made no mistakes. Uzi just played amazing. And then Core's like, damn, we can play with no mistakes and lose this bad. That means that like there's a lot to unpack here. Like,
for the last couple of years, he was retired as he was having some problems with his health, complications from carpal tunnel due to his wrist giving him some pain. On top of that, he was diagnosed with diabetes due to a lack of a healthy diet and long grinding sessions. However, he's come back for 2022, which is probably the most exciting news I've seen for Pro League in a long time. Early on in his career, Uzi went to back-to-back World Finals in 2013 and 2014, but he was defeated 2 times by Korean teams. In 2014, it was the powerhouse Samsung White, but during that first finals run, Uzi and his team were swept by the GOAT himself, Faker and SKT. Faker's accolades for League of Legends are completely unmatched. As for team success, he and his longtime jungler Bangi are the only players to ever win 3 world championships. He also has 2 mid-season invitational wins as well, the second most important tournament of the year. 9 times he's won the LCK, the most historically dominant region in Pro League. He also has now had the longest tenure for any player in org, being a part of T1 his entire career. While this might not stand out to some of you as a proper achievement, you can think about it like this. Faker has played for one team longer than any other player in history, and he's held his spot as the mid laner for the most successful organization in the game for nearly a decade. If T1 did not think that they could win with Faker, and he wasn't as good as he is, they would have swapped him out a long time ago. They are 3-time world champions. His individual numbers are also mind-blowing. He was the first player to ever reach 1,000 kills in the LCK. He's won countless MVPs and accrued so many all-star votes it's ridiculous. Over in Korea for their esports awards given out by Kespa, he's won Player of the Year, he's won some popularity awards, he's been voted into the Hall of Fame. Essentially every single accomplishment and award that you can win for esports, as prestigious or niche as they come, Faker has probably won it. There's more that we could cover, but I think you get the point. The best player ever has won a lot of awards. Go figure, he's Faker for goodness sakes. So just drooling over his 3 world championship trophies, I feel like are a creative trap. I could probably just run some highlights from that first Worlds run in 2013, and you'd sit there in awe saying peak Faker was the best League player ever. So if we're not just going to watch some jaw-dropping highlights, what else could we do? How about we talk about him himself and think about what he specifically did to change the game forever? It's like the saying goes, heroes get remembered, but legends never die. What did Faker do to become a legend? The legacy of Faker started right at the beginning, and I mean like day 1 beginning. The professional debut of Faker has cemented its place in League of Legends lore for a reason. This is the most impressive and legendary first game by any player ever, and it probably won't be matched. Prior to this game, Faker was known in Korea as this solo queue monster with insane mechanics. He was hyped up as a prospect for the future. Keyword: prospect, as in someone with a lot of potential and upside, but it will take some time to develop. The team that he joined was one of the sister teams for SKT T1, known as Team 2 or their nickname Judgment Day. They were sort of this ragtag group of young talented players that fans were excited to watch. They probably wouldn't be super good at first, but given all of their young talent and potential, surely they would form into a very strong team. But how would they fare in their first match against CJ? This team was loaded with veterans who were extremely good in their positions. Captain Jack and Lustboy were the bot lane, and they were known as a strong duo that excelled in teamfights. Flame in the top lane was so good that a league term was made out of his gameplay, the Flame Horizon, which is when you go up more than 100 CS on your enemy laner. And of course, Ambition, a world champion jungler as you probably know him now, yes, but back then he was a mid laner and he was an all-star caliber one at that. Some people even thought back then that he was the best mid laner in the world. In Faker's first ever professional match, he was going up against a god, and he didn't just mid-gap him. He didn't just win the laning phase, my friend. No. he absolutely ruined him. In the first levels of the laning phase, Faker does something to win the lane that would end up being a staple strategy for him, something he's mastered as a trick for years to get ahead. Using his mechanical skill and good understanding of minion aggro, Faker wins a big trade in the mid lane to get ahead against Ambition. If you've ever watched Faker play, obviously he farms extremely well, you know, like a pro player does. But something Faker has never been afraid to do is lose just a bit of CS during the first couple of levels to poke out his enemy. Faker almost always uses his spells in the first few waves to chunk the enemy health bar and not to last hit minions. It's just not worth wasting some of your mana to last hit when you could use it to deny your enemy. Once Faker wins the trade, he pulls a freeze on his side of the wave deep into the lane. That way Ambition has to walk up, and then what he does is chase him way off the wave deep into the jungle. This level of bullying, wave manipulation, and trading seems obvious that he played it extremely well now, but when I say this was completely unheard of at the time, it begins to make more sense. Keep in mind, he's not just doing this against some random solo queue player in Platinum. He is making one of, if not the best mid laners in the world, look silly, look like a silver player. He has zoned him off of so many creeps, and is most likely confusing the crap out of him as to why he's getting destroyed so badly. To throw salt in the wound and make matters worse, maybe from the tilt of losing lane or simply just a random mess up, Faker's first ever kill in Pro League came from a solo kill onto Ambition. He tried to evolve his Kha'Zix W under the turret, and Faker punished it with a nice combo and a quick turret dive. Again, this is super obvious today. If a pro mid laner decided to evolve in disrespect right in front of somebody in 2022, they would die for this. Even a platinum level Zed player these days is so skilled, they would probably combo perfectly, execute a nice tower dive, and get out because the person is standing still. But this was a shock that made it absolutely incredible at the time. The fact that this was his first ever game, the fact that he made a statement like this against someone who was so good, that's what blew everybody away. The next big play comes straight out of the Faker handbook and is something, again, that he popularized and made everybody copy: mid priority. Now, I would be lying if I tried to act like Faker invented something so integral to strategy games as resource management, because that's all lane priority really is. In strategy games like MOBAs, card games, and RTS, resource management is everything. If you have more resources than your opponent in an RTS, you can build a bigger army. If you have more mana in a card game, you can play more powerful cards. In League of Legends, it's much easier to one-shot someone and get a kill on 6 items than it is on 2 items. But what Faker did popularize is the idea that you can push your wave to create an advantage through pressure. Throughout the history of the game, it's been understood that if you shove your wave in, you become more susceptible to jungle ganks. It can be tough to push for turret damage and constantly shove in and harass risk-free. However, what you can do is shove in your wave and get priority. Priority in your lane essentially is the ability to move first without losing resources. When you shove in a whole wave, you have time where the enemy is forced to make a choice, either to farm a tower and collect the resources from the minions, or follow your roam. If they do follow your roam, they'll be missing experience and gold to the turret, and forced to walk into an unwarded jungle. Pushing the wave lets you compete over wards, vision, jungle camps, jungle ganks, objectives, bot and topside roams, everything. And in his debut, we get a great example of that, as he's able to get mid priority, executing a perfect roam and dive into the bot lane, resulting in a double kill to snowball his lead. All of this sounds like a no-brainer, but with good trading in lane, good understanding of wave management, with this mindset to gain pressure in your lane, Faker was way ahead of his time. This start to his career really set the bar for the mid lane. It's a huge reason why he became the GOAT. There's sort of a common idea or understanding that knowledge in this game has progressed substantially every single year, and clearly that is true. Anything in life is like that. Again, similar to real sports, athletes are bigger, faster, stronger, and better in today's age due to better training techniques, medicine, understanding, and strategy of the game itself. For example, a team in the modern NBA would win every game by 50 points or more if they could travel back in time to 1950. League of Legends is really no different in this respect, which is why it's probably true that if you took a group of diamond players in 2022 and formed a team that could time travel back to 2013, it's likely that they would throttle the competition. A team in Season 12 of Diamonds would be world champions. They have an 8 to 9 year gap in knowledge for the most popular game in the world, which is a huge amount of information. For example, in his first ever game, Faker rushed a death cap. Now it's true that items have changed massively since 2013, but death cap really wasn't all that different back then. It still didn't make any sense. The percent AP passive is only effective after a couple of items, and because death cap had no other stats besides AP back then either, it really wasn't that good. If someone argues it's because it was a 120 AP item, guess what? So was Zanya's and DFG at the time. If Faker wanted a huge spike of AP, Zanya's for the active and the armor would have made much more sense. This is the kind of thing that in today's day and age you can explain to a silver player and they will understand, but it really goes to show how far we've come. However, aside from Faker rushing deathcap and trolling his build, there's also something important about him. If one player could stand the test of time, if there was one player that you could pick from that year that would have a chance, it would be Faker. What Faker did, even in his first ever match in one game, was so far ahead of everybody else. The best part is that you don't even have to take my word for it. About 5 years ago, there was an AMA with Dopa that got really popular. Of course, Dopa is likely the best solo queue player ever, a multi-time rank 1 Korean player, a multi-time rank 1 on the best Chinese server as well. My most viewed video is about his story. He is someone who early on in his career was thought to be the anti-Faker, sort of his evil twin. The two were almost tied in terms of skill at the game in many people's eyes, but because Dopa wasn't on the pro circuit and he was banned by Riot Korea for 1,000 years, it left him without the chance to prove himself during his prime. After reaching rank 1 on the Korean server in 2016, he gave some thoughts on Faker, and this is what he had to say about him and why he saw Faker as the League of Legends god. The reason why Faker was the greatest laner in the world was simply this. 1. He forces the enemy jungler to his lane, and 2. He never dies to the enemy jungler. Faker is so great because he's the one who started everything. He started many of the mid lane techniques. He even invented my pink ward positions. Ryze is trash. Maybe he's good for Faker Senpai, but the high skill cap thing is BS. Dopa's comments about Faker have always been from a very serious level of praise and respect. Even when Faker had a down year for his standards in 2016 and 2018, Dopa has always said that Faker is still a legend and he would hope that he could become a god again. Most of what we have talked about so far has to do with Faker's game knowledge and laning phase, what a lot of people would call his macro or just his overall game understanding. But let's talk about the micro, his mechanics. You could be the smartest player in the history of this game, but if you have no idea how to click a mouse, you will never ever be great. Thankfully for Faker, his most iconic mechanical skill moments both came back in 2013. You already know what I'm about to show you. You have seen this play 100 times already. You know exactly what this is. You know about the cleanse, the moves, Faker, what was that? But why? Why is this so important? What about this is undoubtedly the best play in League history? What's the context? Look, in 2022, there are Zed players with years and years more experience now. Mechanics in this game have come so far, a long way. We've seen incredible outplays, incredible pentakills. Heck, I think even a play like Caps just dodging this gank and this tower dive is still one of the most impressive things I've ever seen, and he doesn't even really get like a pentakill or anything like that. It's just a really good mechanical play. But why do we still come back to Faker's iconic Zed vs Zed destruction of Ryu? There are countless reasons for this, but there's one big one. This showed the League of Legends community at the time, for the era, a level of mechanical skill that nobody had ever seen. This play was made back in 2013. Many of you who are League veterans at this point were still just kids when it happened. This was the first true outplay in the game that made everybody's jaws drop. This player was so beyond a level of skill and comprehension for the time, and Faker was just getting started because he was a rookie in his first season. What more could he possibly do? Well, he would show us a little later at Worlds that year.
출발 중입니다.
That farm going on. Reginald putting some pressure down, but Faker actually turning him down. A lot of damage. Reginald goes aggressive, pushes the ultimate. It's gonna get caught out. Faker gets him down.
Oh my god. Oh my god, wow! What the fuck? Best Riven NA move over! There's a new god in town.
Faker and SK Telecom won the 2013 World Championship. It was an absolute rout. They completely destroyed the competition. Faker played some standard stuff like Orianna and Gragas, two very prominent mid lane champions at the time, but if you've seen my video about the legend of Barcode Killer, a video all about his Riven mid, you know where this is headed. During Worlds that year, the most dangerous assassin mid laner was Zed. He was a hotly contested pick. After all, you saw what Faker could do on the champion just a little bit earlier in the season. There wasn't a lot of counterplay to him at the time, and he didn't have that many bad matchups. Or so everyone thought. Everybody but Faker. You see, secretly, Faker had been cooking up something in the lab. A little bit of that hidden, spicy Faker technology, playing a champion that nobody else did really at the time, especially not in the mid lane and not in pro play. Riven. Riven had all these animation cancels and mechanics to master, but nobody aside from a few Riven 1 tricks could really pull it off. There's a reason why BoxBox was able to spawn an entire career because of his early season Riven. When I say that only a few people in the world could do what he did at the time, it really was true. Riven mechanics were not the norm, far from it. But Faker decided that he had the unique counter, something only he had prepared. He would bait the enemy into picking Zed and dumpster them with Riven. His mechanics on the champion were put on full display not only in the actual tournament but also in solo queue, as he racked up an insane win rate climbing the NA ladder. Purely because of Faker, Season 4 saw other pros playing it and mostly failing at Riven mid. Can you believe that at one point Cloud9's High actually played Riven mid in pro play? Faker was so far ahead of everyone playing 4D chess with this counter pick. Years later, Papa Smithy did a great job describing why Faker inventing this pick was so monumental.
For any fans who weren't watching League of Legends 2 years ago or weren't familiar with how Faker revolutionized Riven play, it wasn't taking it to the mid lane. It was just understanding the animation cancelling that most players didn't even know was possible with Riven. The amount of damage that he was able to get out through auto attacks specifically, queuing them up during animations, is what separated him from other Riven players and are now very much the norm, and it's why one of this pick is so seminal to Faker. He just revolutionized mid lane Riven and Riven in general as a champion. On hits, we're going full on hit on this side. Lulu being locked in. Is this going to be Lulu mid lane?
Faker's one of his most played champions.
It is.
Definitely in the top 3.
But it's blind.
The final thing that we're going to talk about today is Faker's willingness to be a team player. This might come as a surprise to those of you that haven't followed his career, but he doesn't always play carry champions. Sure, Faker has made an absolute name for himself being the unkillable Demon King, the god of the mid lane, Riven, Zed, and LeBlanc extraordinaire, but there were times that Faker has played almost nothing but Lulu mid. Faker has always had a good karma, and during the time in which funneling completely broke the meta with Master Yi Taric as well as some other combos, Faker was on the support while his jungler played the Yi. Where this comes full circle is when we can come back to Gretzky, the GOAT of hockey. If we compare Faker to the greatest of all time for any sport, Gretzky might just be the closest. He was a deadly skilled player, but in terms of being the best ever, he had amazing game sense. He knew what shots he could score, but he also knew the shots that he didn't have, and instead of just firing up a bad shot, he would pass the puck. Yes, it's very true that Gretzky does hold the NHL record for goals, but he also leads in assists by a significant margin. It wasn't always just a show about him. He was just as happy to pass the puck, because even though it wasn't another goal tally for him, he also recognized a good opportunity for the team, and when it came to him, winning was the most important. Faker has always been similar. Think back to what Dopa said. The biggest praise for Faker that he gave wasn't about his mechanical skill. He didn't mention that 1Z outplay. He said it was his ability to play the lane well, how he invented many of the warding spots, and he set things up for his jungler. Despite making some of the best mechanical outplays in history, one of his only true equals in terms of skill says that he's an amazing team player and he's so incredibly smart. Faker leads so many different individual categories, having the most world championship wins along with his jungler at 3. He's regarded as the best player of all time, and is still probably one of the least arrogant and cocky goats of any sport that I've ever seen. There are league pros from NA that have accomplished literally nothing in comparison, and they are more full of themselves and cockier than Faker could ever even imagine himself being. And I think that's the sign of a true, selfless, humble god that we don't even deserve. It's because of what he did even from the very beginning, from his first ever pro game. He set the bar so high, doing things other pro players couldn't. He will be the face of this game for a very long time, and it would take a lot to knock him off his Demon King throne. It's true that Showmaker and Chovy and the Shy and a lot of these other players, Uzi, there have been many amazing League of Legends players, but it would be really difficult to say that any of them are more impactful, better, and more important to this game than Faker has always been. That's his story, and that's how he became the GOAT.
Like, Faker actually saying he'll boycott solo queue has a lot of ramifications, because everyone would just interpret Faker as like a shield, because Faker's probably just like immune, because Faker's the Michael Jordan of our fucking game, and he's actually an icon in like South Korea. So Faker saying he'll boycott solo queue, Faker just can do what would normally take like an entire league to do. So it's kind of cool. Faker has KO ult and Gwen W. It doesn't really make sense, but